Hey y'all. Today I had an idea come to me. I hope that you enjoy it. I feel like the past few videos, when I sit down to make notes and to start thinking about a topic that I want to focus in on and share with you all, it's kind of like I can see the things we've discussed in the past like expanding and building, in my mind. And so I'm loving this approach, and I don't want to just get comfortable and assume that it's going to continue coming to me this easy. But it's one of those things where I feel like I'm trying to live every moment intentionally aligned with that inner guidance system, with the inner guiding light. And so I feel like that this is something that when I sit down and I'm starting to ponder the next idea for a video, when something is placed on my heart and in my mind, I feel good about it. It's kind of like I tune into that gut check, and if it feels right and I start writing and it just starts to flow, then I feel like it must be, meant to be. So, and I know that if you engage in any kind of art whatsoever, whether it's writing, journaling, any kind of crafts, or painting, photography, anything like that, songwriting, it's kind of a mystical experience to create, because it's sort of like sometimes you feel like it's just not going to happen if you're trying to force it. It's almost like you have to wait until the inspiration strikes, and then it's almost like you are that conduit for that creative force. And now that we have learned, well, it was new for me to learn about the term numinosity. It's kind of like, I feel like that's definitely the origin of that driving force of creativity. And so it's like when you're engaged in that and you latch on and take advantage of, you harness that inspiration in the moment, then it's like you're allowing that creative energy to flow through you. And so I think, people who don't practice being creative whatsoever, I don't know that they could really ever understand, when they just hear the word, inspiration, or I was inspired. It's kind of like they may just, have this textbook grasp of the term, but to really know what it means, via firsthand experience, that's something totally different. So that's a whole nother topic we could we could just branch off and go down that rabbit hole too, right, if we wanted to. But today I want to talk about thinking outside the box. So we've been talking about how it comes natural to some of us to think outside the box, and I think it just varies, the specifics, person to person. And I think this is just my opinion, which really all of this is. It's just my own theories, and as I'm examining different material that I'm coming across, it's like I'm forming my own theories, sharing with you all. And again, my desire is simply to prompt you to take an idea and thoughts and just run with it, and draw your own conclusions, right, for the benefit of your life and those who are close to you. So but it's like, I feel like if you're an honest person by nature, it's just who you are, I feel like you're approaching life anyway, like we discussed last time, with somewhat of an open mind. And then you have to intentionally train yourself how to, whittle down and focus on specifics. And so I think I mentioned to you before, I had a friend in the past say to me, she said, you're just so open. And she meant it like unguarded. And I think that a lot of this stuff kind of goes hand in hand, because if you're operating with an open mind openly, like, it's just coming right out and you're sharing it with everybody, you're giving too many details out, then it is making you, it's positioning you in a vulnerable manner. And, it's the opposite of operating, with some type of armor, guarded. So there is a balance that we're seeking here. But we did focus last video, I feel like maybe even the last couple of videos, on how to refine down and use mindful intention with choosing specific thoughts to focus on. So today I want to talk about expanding and the things that can actually kind of harm that process, that can impose and impede upon, stunt, limit the process of outside the box thinking, how that happens, and how we can just find that balance, essentially, and just taking that level of wisdom to the next level, so that we can refine even more so how and when to operate one way with an open mind versus with deliberate intention, focusing on little bits and pieces. So that's the point today. The point, which is like all over the place, right? So, yeah, I feel like the best solutions, if you're ever looking for a solution, is outside the box thinking. I really do. And I want to start with a little bit of a joke, or something for you to look into. I don't know if you've ever watched the TV show Impractical Jokers. I haven't seen it in a few years, but I used to watch it religiously. And Joe Gatto just would crack me up. And I think it was Joe who I know it was at least in one skit, but I feel like it kind of came up, a few other times, where he was just casually talking, and it was all, BS. He was just joking, obviously, but he's talking like he's very serious, and he's talking about this experience of running into this kid, and he's an adult, and he's like talking about how the kid just, rubbed him in the wrong way, and he was like, so I just did a roundhouse, soft. And it's like shocking for someone to hear that. Like, are you serious? Did you literally just attack this minor? And then he expands the story, and he's like, yeah, then the grandparent walked up, and I was like, I'm not dealing with this, so roundhouse, and it's just hilarious to see. Their whole point, if you've never seen it, is to play pranks on people. And so they were really good at it, and it was just really funny. And so sometimes when I had kind of a challenging run-in, an experience just out of the blue with some strangers that just kind of had a chip on their shoulder, yesterday. And so it was just kind of interesting. And so I disengaged very quickly, and I never want to just, I'm very non-confrontational, and I like it that way. But, it's the difference in carrying a bad experience with you for hours and hours, or even for days, versus just seeing it for what it is, disengaging, putting up your armor and handling it with, mindful intention. And so that's what we're looking for. But it's kind of fun when you've got these little things you can look back on. It just kind of interrupts that process of maybe you could have gotten triggered and upset, but you just think of these funny moments. And so it's like, I can just think back on Joe Gatto going, roundhouse. It's like, you're not really going to do it. But it's just fun to think about, right? And funny to think about. So I just wanted to mention that to you. If you want to do a Google search on or a YouTube search on clips from that show, it's just gives you a lot of humor that you can just store and tuck back in here for when you need it, So wouldn't that be nice though, if life was that simple? You just had some kind of BS pop up, and somebody who's intentionally wanting to rub you the wrong way, or being a jerk or whatever, and you're just thinking roundhouse. But yeah, we don't want to do that in real life. So and then I want to mention I've mentioned to you before, you can find inspiration everywhere. And so I was watching Bluey the other day, and I have a child, so she likes a wide variety of cartoons, and if you've never seen Bluey is a fairly recent show for kids. It's a cartoon, and it's really great for adults too, because a lot of times it feels like the lessons are actually for the parents, like the ideal way to handle a sticky situation with children, or an ideal way to solve a problem. And so it's really very eye-opening at times, and it's just very sweet, and it's very deep and profound at times too. So I just really enjoy watching that with her. And there was an episode that was new to me. I don't know if it's actually new, but it was one I had never seen before that just came on recently. And it was where the dad was holding up this unicorn puppet. And the title of it, instead of it being unicorn, they called it unicorse. And I don't know their intention with that, but the puppet itself, the dad was making it be kind of like a brash personality, you know, like a coarse, abrasive type personality that just rubs you the wrong way. And the whole context of this was that their daughter Bluey had come downstairs and she didn't want to go to sleep, and so the mom was exhausted. She was trying to be serious and read her a story, and so the dad was hiding behind the couch popping up this puppet and just going about it, you know, a totally different, contrary way from what the mom was doing. And so at first the mom was just really irritated, like, man, I'm just trying to get her to sleep. And he was just, you know, going on, and Bluey thought it was hilarious, you know, I mean, just like a kid would in real life. She thought the puppet being super annoying was just great and funny and all this. Well, the mom didn't want to get her stirred up. She was trying to calm her down, which I get this as a parent. But the point is that they learned through the course of this 10 or 15 minute cartoon, Bluey and the mom attempting to finish and go through the story at bedtime, the whole time with this annoying little puppet just, you know, just right in their face and getting, you know, just irritating the daylights out of them. They were able to learn the lesson of tuning that out and choosing what to focus on and choosing what to ignore. And so you know, the way that they're able to bring these lessons through in this cartoon is just so creative and wonderful, and I just really enjoy watching it. But that's really the difference, I feel like, when you're operating at a just a baseline. What is when you're just in your element, you know, your normal natural baseline state. I feel like that's when we want to operate with our mind expanded, so that we can, because when you're operating with your mind expanded, you're I'm looking over my notes here, they're all over the place. There's a lot of really good things to that. First of all, you're going to be able to see solutions that maybe others who have a more limited way of thinking are not going to see. And you're also going to be able to dream up possibilities for your life, you know. Next week, next year, 10 years down the road, whatever it is, you're going to just see more because your mind is expanded. So I feel like operating that way on the regular, it's just your natural element, is a really great approach. And then when you have these brash people come along, or situations or whatever, who are just, you know, acting like a toddler and stomping their feet, and, you know, just it's the people who just go around every day like in this victimhood mindset, you know, just complaining that things aren't fair, and just looking for someone to accuse as their oppressor, or as someone they can point a finger at so that they can justify being a victim, basically. You have that personality, and then you have others that are just in your face wanting your attention, and they're just loud and obnoxious, whatever it is. So many different situations. These are simply just examples. But someone who is rubbing you the wrong way, someone who is coarse and brash and you know, disturbing your peace, basically. We want that kind of experience to trigger us in that moment, because we are paying attention and we have situational awareness. Ideally, this would trigger us to harness mindful intention that we talked about last time, where we can then zoom in, because we talked about zooming out to see everything, right? So these situations that we find ourselves in the moment, ideally we would be aware enough to engage in this mindful intention, and harness that ability to zoom in and then choose, okay, here's the truth, here's the truth, here's the truth about the situation. Which truth that I can choose to act on is going to bring about the best situation, basically. Like, what kind of action is going to bring about a safe, because people are crazy, right? So I think you definitely need to consider safety in how you respond. A safe and a fruitful outcome. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be happy about it, because that's going to be gaslighting yourself. And we have to be careful with that if, let's say a jerk just walks up and they're in your face. Well, to try and fool yourself into thinking that you can turn this into just a happy and great situation, that's not realistic. And you're going to feel this pang of self-betrayal if you're trying to fool yourself into thinking that there's some kind of just silver lining here. So I like to look at this like, what kind of action can I take in this moment? And this has to be a quick process. And see, practice is going to help us to learn to do this and learn to do it quicker and quicker and quicker every time. Okay, we're exposed to people or situations like this. But ultimately, I think this is what I'm going to do, and what I'm already practicing. What kind of action in this moment can I take that is safe and it's going to bring about a fruitful outcome? So this is where you're zooming in for a minute, okay, and you're saying, okay, let's look at all these truths. Number one, this person's being a selfish, rude jerk. They're acting like a toddler, whatever it is, but worse, obviously, because I like toddlers. Number two, I think it's good to do a quick self-assessment, especially if it's a situation where someone's trying to, justify acting like a victim by pointing at you for something, when in reality you're totally innocent. But it's still good always to do a quick self-assessment, like, did I do or say something wrong? You know what I mean? Because we want to keep that sense of humility as part of our character and our value system. And so that's always good. But again, this process can happen super quick once we get in the habit of it. And then thirdly, what kind of action is going to bring about that safe and fruitful outcome? Fruitful, not happy, not great, fruitful. And in that third step there, I think you can zoom out and you can start to see all the possibilities of different actions you can take in that moment. And that's what we want to do. Now, ultimately this is going to bring about a way of operating that is in balance, but it's also going to be shifting based on the situation. Again, you want to have that awareness based on your situation and know how to shift the way you operate based on that. And so I thought it would be interesting just to also note, what kind of things actually hinder outside the box thinking, right? When you're trying to on that step number three, what kind of action is going to bring about a safe and fruitful outcome. That's where you want to, expand again and start looking at different options in the moment. You're not going to do this openly. You're just doing this kind of quietly in your mind really quickly right before you act. And so if somebody is struggling to do that, to see all the different options, it's kind of like, what happened? What's wrong? What has damaged their operating system to be unable to do that, right? And I don't think you're ever unable. I think sometimes you might have to work at it a little harder than someone else who hasn't experienced these things we're about to talk about. But there's certain things like abusive conditioning. If you were brought up in an abusive environment, someone who is psychologically manipulative, and you grew up where you actually are hesitant to almost say anything because you've just learned to walk on eggshells as part of your conditioning, that might prevent you from acting at the right time. You might get stuck, just thinking about, what do I do in that step number three, right, in the moment, and it might keep you from acting at all. So your response may be to freeze up, and that can in turn turn into all kind of other problems, like just beating yourself up for, why didn't I do this or why didn't I do that? Because, well, you couldn't think of it in the moment. You know what I mean? You were froze up in your mind. You were so hesitant. And so you can kind of look back and say, well, then why why was I not able to think of a good step to take in the moment? And it may simply be because of your conditioning. And then, of course, emotions can certainly trigger us to be reactive instead of responsive. And so just learning that emotional maturity is super valuable. Okay, and it's very different than just maturity with related to other things like just intelligence and wisdom and a lot of different ways you can look at maturity. But emotional maturity and emotional intelligence or emotional IQ, you can, Google all this kind of stuff. I know there's books written on it too, but just learning how to get a grasp on your emotions, even if it's just, taking a moment to breathe, to do some deep breathing and to regulate your heart rate, whatever it takes. Getting a grip on your emotions is going to help a lot, so that you're not going to totally sabotage that opportunity in the step number 3 to choose something that's going to bring about a fruitful outcome. Because if you react very angrily or whatever, for example, that's certainly not going to bring about a fruitful outcome, and even if it did make you feel good, it's only going to be for a split second, and it could also jeopardize your safety. So that's super important, right? And then, of course, cultural, familial, and social influences can also restrict or limit our outside-the-box thinking. If you're just day in and day out subjected to the same thought patterns within a family structure or even within a workplace structure, because management teams, they spend time on intentionally creating a particular culture, a workplace culture that's going to be conducive to the best profit and all the good things for good outcomes for the business, right? And ideally, a healthy company would consider what's good for the employees too. But it's possible we might find ourselves in a workplace that doesn't think of that. And so you might find yourself, unintentionally thinking with this super restrictive thought pattern that has been influenced by this toxic work environment. That can limit your thinking, where you're not outside the box anymore. And then the company, that's something where companies, a lot of times, they have to go outside the organization and hire consultants to do the outside the box thinking, because within the organization there has been this such structure placed on finding solutions that they can't even see what someone who has a fresh set of eyes can see. So it's just, there's a lot to think about with regards to limits on our thought patterns and our ability to think outside the box or not. But ideally, like I said, ideally we want to operate with our mind expanded. We want that to be our natural element, and yet we want to keep it guarded, right? And we want to have situational awareness where we can intentionally tune in the moment and harness mindful intention in order to go through that quick 3-step process. So yes, I think I've covered everything. And I just want to reiterate again, to try and take some kind of concept like the ones we've talked about here in this video and just make it just a textbook kind of checklist type thing, and then just force it in a situation in your life before you're ready. That's not going to work. You know what I mean? In fact, it's going to feel like self-betrayal. It's going to feel out of place. And so we definitely want to take these concepts and sit with them and truly take the time to process what it means for you and how you can incorporate this in your life, so that it will feel natural, it will come natural for you, and you'll be operating in just such a great way, a great manner, that you're keeping yourself safe, you're keeping yourself open to beautiful possibilities and solutions that maybe you would have never dreamed of 5-10 years ago, maybe even 6 months ago. And so yes, I hope this has been inspirational for you and encouraging for you. I really do. I'm going to be looking a little bit into, I don't know if you guys have heard of Joseph Campbell, but he's got some pretty interesting books. And, you know, I just really, going through the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, where she talks about archetypes. And I think there's been research on archetypes throughout history that has gone in many different directions, but I've learned that Carl Jung has expanded on that a little bit too. And then there's this author, Joseph Campbell, who's written books on archetypal symbolism and myths too. And so my mom actually has some of his old books, and I was flipping through one. I think it was called The Hero's Journey, if I'm not mistaken, but just a brief skimming over bits and pieces of it. I feel like I'm just going to give it away. So if you don't want to hear, you just want to fast forward this part. And I could be wrong, but my first impression of that book about the hero's journey, and you can Google that too, by the way, that concept, the hero's journey, is that you know, this quest that we're all on, in different ways, different paths to find some kind of ultimate, you know, treasure or big truth or set of truths that's going to just be like, you know, mind-blowing and ultimately life-changing. My understanding of what is being presented in this concept of the hero's journey is that ultimately the hero is able to find out or determine that we are all bits and pieces of one whole, right, of God. And so this is one of those things where you can apply outside the box thinking, or you can apply limited thinking. And again, I could have this wrong, but this is just my first impression. So I feel like, you know, limited thinking would be just to simply say, just grasp on to, you know, a very limited concept like, well, you know, we're all God together. That's it. Bam, done. Well, then, you know, an outside the box view would be, and this is where people can get in arguments so easily over, you know, beliefs, and I truly believe, you know, keeping your pearls, your beliefs, guarded to some degree. The degree that you choose is totally up to you, right? And that's a private and personal matter, and I get that, but if you're just going to throw it all out there for everyone, then it's going to be vulnerable and open to, just like that verse, you know, the pigs will trample them beneath their feet. That's a verse in the Bible. If you just, you know, throw your pearls out there for everyone to look at. But there's a balance there too, because it's great to you know, to be able to find your people. That's incredible. And yet you don't want to put too much out there and just make yourself vulnerable for all the jerks and people who are just looking for an argument, you know, because I don't know, they're bored. I don't really know why people do this, but they do. But an outside the box approach to this would be, well, you know, for example, in Christianity, it's said that, you know, we're all part of the body of Christ, and Christ is God incarnate. So it's like, you know, people would argue this, but it's kind of like, well, it does say that. So, you know, I personally have a belief in a Heavenly Father, and I'll never deny that. But I like to approach all these topics with an open mind and expanded mind to understand myself better and others. That's just my desire, because that's going to bring unity. That's going to bring true unity, and I think that that's what we really should desire. You know what I mean? Not division. There's so many things out in this world that are that cause division, and it, you know, expanded look here would be, are they meant to cause division? You know, I don't know, but yes, I always like to look at things like, you know, how can I find the unity here? Is there unity here? But just something to think about, because maybe a lot of truths could be a both and situation instead of a my way or your way, a black and white either or. You know, maybe God can be separate and we can also be a part of God at the same time. You know what I mean? So that we can have that relationship in that way, because it's one thing to be one and have a relationship with one, but it's another to have 2 or more, so that there can be, engagement in a relationship in that manner. So I hope this gives you a lot to think about. And, I just thought I would mention that in case you all know anything about it, or have thoughts about, Joseph Campbell or the hero's journey, or the concepts I've mentioned. I would love to hear your thoughts. And I may be presenting more information on those topics in the future. I don't know. We'll just see where the inspiration takes me. So I just hope that you enjoyed today's conversation and discussion, and I just enjoy you guys coming along this path with me so much. I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I will see you again very soon.
Love.